And today's topic is sovereignty and what does it look like when we take ownership of our lives in a real complete way. But before we get to talking about our topic, let's just take a minute or two to get present. And let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. Imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing every cell, every organ with vital life energy. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, negativity, stress, toxicity. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating every cell, every electron, every molecule, and energizing, electrifying, and connecting you with the world beyond. You exhale, exhale any remaining stress, fatigue, tension, negativity, toxicity. And now let's just gently press our palms together, really softly, softly, softly. Rub your fingers against your palms. Put your attention in your fingertips and in the nerves in your palms to really, really feel and experience that sensation and allow yourself to become present right here, right now. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Rosalind, and good morning, everybody else who's joining us. It's great to have you here. And we're talking about sovereignty today because we've been talking about trusting ourselves and betrayal and boundaries this week. And it occurs to me that when we take ownership of our lives, even in ways that may seem counterintuitive, that may challenge our notion of how things happen, like we often feel like things as experiences happen to us. And I'm inviting everybody today to think about what happens if, as we say a lot, if life is happening for us and through us rather than to us. What if we have maybe even an unconscious or invisible hand in creating the circumstances that we experience, no matter how tragic or dire they may be? This is a thought experiment for us to engage in. Good morning, Robert. Wonderful, wonderful to have you as always. So we're talking about sovereignty, and we could have called it responsibility as well, but when we take ownership of our lives, I did decide to look up the word sovereignty. So I'm going to read you a definition, just a quickie. Let's see. Uh, the quality or state of being sovereign or of having supreme power or authority. The status, dominion, power, or authority of a sovereign, royal rank or position. Royalty. I kind of like that. And a sovereign or independent state, rightful status, independence or prerogative. And I think it's really important for us to, at least, as I said, a mind experiment, like a perpetual um, working hypothesis that we are in ultimate control of our lives, or that we have ultimate sovereignty. Good morning, Christina. Good morning, Tammy. Wonderful to have you guys here. We're talking about what would happen if we lived as if we were sovereign in our lives, if we were the rulers of our lives, if we were the ones that were generating our lives, even from an invisible hand that is our own, our higher self, or if you want to go beyond that into a higher power. So Dennis, hi, welcome. Great to have you here. So if we operated as if we were sovereign in our lives, what would be different? How might we operate differently. I think one of the things that would shift immediately is the sense of victimhood. And even though circumstances arise that are incomprehensible sometimes, that are really confusing and baffling and disorienting, what would happen if we could come back to the place of sovereignty, that this is our lives unfolding for us, by us, in some way, shape, or form. Good morning, Marianne. Wonderful to have you here. I don't know if I've seen your name here before. I'm delighted to welcome you into our wonderful community here. And Andrea, good morning. It's great to have you. So we're talking about sovereignty. What does it look like? What would change? What would change if you believed that in some way your higher self or your higher knowing is guiding the life that's unfolding for you? And what if you took on in a conscious way that you are the creator of your life? And I'm just wondering what might be different for you. What might you experience differently? Because I think that we fall into patterns relatively easily, patterns of feeling at the effect of our lives, feeling like we have no control. Good afternoon, Hope. So good to have you here as always. If we feel that we're at the effect of our lives, the experience of life is much more fearful, right? If we can imagine that we are sovereign, even if we don't necessarily know the direction that things are going, if we can imagine, again, a thought experiment, if we can imagine that it is our higher self that is directing the events of our lives, then perhaps we have a greater ability to relinquish the desire to control that's born of fear, where we're trying to just ease, the fear is a reaction to the unknown, or I think the fear is the reaction to the unknown or the confusing, or I think as I think about it, fear is pretty much a reaction to the unknown, or to an expectation of something that is frightening, right? An expectation of something that's going to happen that's frightening. And I wonder if we sit with this notion of being sovereign in our lives, that we are designing this life, whether consciously or otherwise, that we are designing this life for our ultimate fulfillment, for our ultimate expression. What would be different? So Marianne says perspective would shift dramatically. Exactly. And so here's the thing, who's to say that it's not true, right? So if we don't know that it's not true, I mean, you can gain evidence on any side you choose to look for evidence on. So I'm thinking, why not take some time and attention and develop evidence that yes, life is unfolding for me and through me, by me, for me and through me. What then shifts? How we can relax a bit more, even in the face of things that are threatening or frightening initially, that may shift their weight in our experience. Robert says, is being sovereign being a self-sufficient individual? Well, I think we can. Yes, and I guess it depends on what you mean by the word self-sufficient, right? So what I mean is having our own choice, having our own independence of thought, And actually, truthfully, when you talk about self-sufficiency, that's something that is very close to my heart. And by the way, I've mentioned to you that I'm going to be having a program on the new Enlightened World channel, One with the Earth. And we were scheduled to start today, but decided to push it back to April 7th to give me a little bit more breathing room, because life has been very, very rich and full lately. And I've been, yeah, I don't know. Have you ever felt like you're on that hamster wheel, even if it's my own hamster wheel that I've created? I've felt like the hamster wheel's winning lately. So Ruth Anderson, who is the mastermind behind, not only the mastermind, but the catalyst and the driving force and the visionary and the energy behind Enlightened World Network, the primary energy, with wonderful support, by the way, it has been generous enough to allow me to go a little bit forward into the future with the start of the show. So that's awesome. Anyway, self-sufficient, I have visions of living off the grid, like having independent energy supply, independent food supply, independent water supply, etc. And so, there is this notion for me, certainly, of self-sufficiency. However, self-sufficiency still resides, for me anyway, within community. It doesn't mean isolation, but it does mean some degree of autonomy of thought, independence of thought, awareness, consciousness, making our own decisions, making our own evaluations, not just taking for granted what the public view is, to do our own research, to do our own due diligence, etc. And Robert, you were talking about this the past couple of days when you were talking about gossip. When people gossip about other people, and the only experience you have of those other people is the gossip, then we have a responsibility to be making our own determinations based on observation or experience, and not just buy into the tide of public opinion. So Robert says, right. I mean, like, not depending on any other being in order to live a fulfilled life, which each individual perspective is different. Beautiful, Robert. Thank you for that clarification. Yes. Well, if I am sovereign, then, as Robert is so well describing, then I'm responsible for my well-being. And if I am sovereign, that means that someone else who's saying things about me or to me is not is not someone that I need to allow to shape my experience. Now, there are times when people deliberately go after other people. I've been in those situations where I've had I've had people who were adversaries that were pursuing me adversarially, if that's a word. And in those cases, maintaining one's sovereignty is perhaps more challenging. If you're having people that are actively bullying or creating a campaign against you in some way, shape, or form, then it is more challenging to maintain your sovereignty. However, if even in those circumstances, when, I don't know, in my case in the past, I was not as aware, and I was very filled with fear around this situation and felt very much a victim. Um, had I been able to perhaps connect to the idea that these crazy circumstances might be happening for me somehow, I may have been more creative in finding positive aspects. I may have been able to navigate the whole terrifying circumstance more powerfully. And that's kind of what I'm talking about in terms of sovereignty, you know, to allow ourselves to have our own integration within ourselves, our own wholeness, and come from that wholeness to the circumstances of life, and with an expectation um, and intention that we will use this circumstance for our highest good. And I just want to be clear that as I'm saying that, I don't mean painting things with a brush of rainbows and unicorns. I mean, honestly, we talked about honesty yesterday, honestly observing a situation, but also in being able to objectively observe a situation, we have, with an expectation that there is benefit there, we have the ability to find benefit where we might not otherwise have that capacity. So Robert says, yes, that also being off grid. And Elaine, welcome, welcome. So good to have you here as always. And Robert says, so it basically means taking your power back, right? Exactly, 100%. When I am sovereign in my life, I am the ruler of my life. So I am empowered in my life. And Robert says, and yes, I had fear and it hurt. This was a powerful experience for me, relating to Elaine. Elaine said that, yes. Um, and Robert said, not allowing other people to control you in any way. Exactly. I'm sorry. Elaine said, I have had a whole town come against me. Oh my heavens, that had to be turning your world upside down, right? And Elaine says, and yes, I had fear and it hurt. This was a powerful experience for me. And Elaine, it sounds to me that you came out on the other side stronger, which is a tribute to you. Somehow you were owning your own authority in your life at some time to be able to move through that experience of a whole town coming against you. You know, it's interesting. Years ago, I remember, I remember a prominent figure in the transformational movement who had a real movement launched in opposition to him, slandering him and really smearing him pretty intensely through the media and publicly and through private channels. And it was really interesting. He chose not to respond. And ultimately, he was vindicated. But he chose not to respond publicly. And I think in a certain way, he, not that that's always the best way, but in this particular instance, he just allowed that what was going on was about the people that were perpetrating it. It wasn't really about him because, you know, he maintained his integrity. And Elaine says, I showed up as me. Beautiful, Elaine. Good for you. So you were exercising your sovereignty and your power over yourself and your life. Congratulations. And congratulations for coming to the other side of it. That's huge. And I was thinking of talking about courage today, because having your sovereignty often requires courage, right? It requires courage to show up as you and to maintain your wholeness and your integrity in the face of the onslaughts of circumstance and potentially other people. Christina says, thank you for making a distinction that it can be harder when there is a campaign against you in terms of being a target of hate or ill intentions. I like the idea of taking my power back and having a powerful experience. Christina, you're so welcome. I mean, life, so here, interestingly, if this idea of sovereignty and life happening for us and through us rather than to us, if we imagine that we are creating the circumstances of life, it's like, oh my gosh, if I were creating this, I would never create this campaign against me that is just vicious and violent. And the thing is, um, we we go through dark nights of the soul, and what happens in those places, if we survive them, and I know that sometimes it feels doubtful that we will. I've experienced that myself. When we come out on the other side, there is a much greater richness and depth and perspective. And we, as we heal from that, you know, as we as we take ownership of the tragedies or the scars that we have, they can be transformed from wounds to badges of courage, and to a deeper wisdom. And I believe that the tragedies and the challenges and the difficulties that we create in our lives, if we are doing this thought experiment that we create it all for ourselves, that the extreme experience of those tragedies and difficulties is in proportion to our capacity. And it's really interesting. I had a very powerful conversation with someone the other day who is very much on the front lines of endangered people who are living on the street, people who have had challenges and are wrestling with addiction, and people who have been human trafficked, have been the object of human trafficking, and people who are living really challenging lives. And this person has also had deep challenges in their lives, like really literally life and death situations. And it was interesting to have them speak that the energy of these circumstances that they put themselves in, which are potentially life-threatening circumstances, is an incredibly wild energy, and that there is a tremendous vitality that they find in that space with the high extreme drama of those spaces. And so, to what you were saying, Christina, is you had a powerful experience and you created, perhaps just try it on as a possibility, you created this intense circumstance where it was you against the world in a way, and you came through it triumphant. And the strength of recognizing that you have come through it, even if you're still healing from it, is an incredible power to be able to harness. I hope that makes sense. I think that the extreme challenges that we create for ourselves, if, again, trying on the thought, I'm not saying it's true, it's one of my hypotheses, that those are the energies that enliven us. They may come close to killing us, and maybe they will at some point kill us. But in the meantime, they also enliven us. We play on an edge, and that's where vitality, lives, is in these ebbs and flows that we talked about earlier in the week. So Elaine says, I was intuitively guided on what to do and how to handle it. I met fear with love, hatred with love. I showed up as me and stayed kind and loving and understanding for them as well as myself. It is all a reflection. And for those of you who didn't hear Elaine's earlier comment, it was being attacked really by a campaign against her, and by a whole town. And Elaine, kudos to you, because I don't know how many people would have the presence to respond to that kind of attack with love. So that's a remarkable example that you set for all these people that were attacking you. Kudos to you. That's remarkable. And Elaine says, on the other side of fear is the real you, love, a beautiful moment of self enlightenment. That's beautiful. I like that a lot. Thank you for that. And you always bring such love and such heart to these conversations, Elaine. Thank you for that. And Christina says, replying to Elaine, great job. Years ago, I was a firefighter in a small rural town and had the fire chief do some creeper sexual stuff. I get how difficult it is to be in that predicament. You are brave and strong. And that brings us back to this notion of courage with sovereignty, because sometimes it means going against the grain. Sometimes it means standing up for as yourself, for yourself, potentially against public opinion, potentially against the prevailing thought. It means maintaining yourself, your integrity, your sovereignty. And Robert says that's where the expression "what doesn't kill you makes you stronger" comes in, or comes from. You know, I was avoiding saying that, Robert, but the truth is that that was my anthem for a number of years. Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I think that's true. I think it's possible to learn the wrong lessons, and what I mean by wrong is the less empowering lessons from our difficult experiences. You know, we can harbor anger and rage and feel vengeful and all kinds of things, or we can glean richer lessons if we accept the thought experiment that life is happening for us and through us and by us, orchestrated by us, even through our potentially invisible higher self. Then the resentment and blame for others and blame for ourselves and the rage perhaps can dissipate. So Rosalind says, what about when someone says, can you accept me for who I am? Does sovereignty play in the role of the person accepting? The person who is asked to accept or give validation can play the role if the other person just wants to feel heard, but doesn't have to own their emotions. So, you know, Rosalind, I agree with you. When you are accepting someone for who they are, it doesn't mean that you have to agree with them. You know, you can accept, and this is actually what we've been talking about for the past couple of days as well, you know, being honest with yourself. And being honest about what you observe in another. It's like, yeah, I can accept that you are who you are. I don't have to agree. I don't have to condone your choices in order to accept you for who you are. So good distinction there, Rosalind. Christina says, replying to Elaine, I learned a lot too. It was tough, but keeping steady with being honest, focused on positive change, holding on to values, and being kind does eventually come through. Exactly. So one of the beautiful themes that's emerging today that I'm so inspired by with you is meeting the darkness of others with light. You know, meeting others' attacks with kindness and compassion and presence. You know, being whole in and of yourself, being consistent with your presence, and rather than responding in kind when when we meet anger with anger, what happens is that it accelerates. When we meet anger with curiosity or love or a desire to understand or kindness, that anger tends to dissipate. And this is another way that we exercise sovereignty, is to say, you know, you can, however you feel, you can feel, and that doesn't necessarily impact my feelings. You know, I can still, if you can be enraged and infuriated, and I can still be kind and present because I have sovereignty over myself. And what a rich, rich, rich conversation. And thank you guys for sharing your hearts so openly and vulnerably here. I think you are an example. You are a wonderful, wonderful example of what it looks like to maintain your sovereignty in very challenging circumstances. So Elaine says, in response to Christina, I hear you. This calls out parts of ourselves to remember, to forgive and let go, and hold the integrity of your own light as we stand in the truth, as the truth sets one free. So this is really important. I agree. We do have the opportunity to forgive and let go, but do not forget, do not wash over what you know about another person or what you've seen another person announce about themselves with rainbows and unicorns. Be aware of what is going on about about the people, the circumstances that you are engaged in. Please be alert. Do not let your good heart make you blind to what's true or what's there. Okay, this is really, really important. Yes. So Rosalind says that last person put in canned spam. I like sliced spam. Well, I just blocked them. So I don't know if that'll stop anything going forward, but yes. Anyway, as always, I have to say, pan fried and crispy, Rosalind says. And Robert says, I believe that when we are able to discuss our vulnerabilities, we are being sovereign, as we know that our vulnerabilities can no longer hurt us. I love that, Robert. So for 13 years, I wore a wig. And if people, I had so many people that would compliment my hairstyle, and I would tell them it's a wig. You know, I would say, well, you can have this hairstyle too. You can buy it online. What, you know, but the thing is that I was still wearing a wig. And in a way, you know, like that was one of my vulnerabilities. Like I realized that there was a part of me that was wearing this wig because there was shame around just being how I am. You know, there was some degree where I was not accepting myself. And and when I took off that wig, the reason I put on the wig in the first place when my hair started falling out was because I shaved my head when all this hair was falling out because I couldn't stand seeing it build up in the sink. It was from alopecia, or what they call alopecia. And so I shaved my head. I went to the gym, and people came up to me and told me they were praying for me. And I couldn't bear, at that time, I couldn't bear the pity that I was getting from people. And so I put on a wig, and I wore a wig for 13 years. And I cut myself off from a lot of experience because I wore that wig, because I didn't want it to be exposed, so to speak. Not like I was hiding, but I didn't, like I wouldn't go swimming and et cetera, et cetera. And there was so much more freedom when I allowed myself to just be as I am, as I am. So, Elaine says, I'm not sure I can die, as I have died 5 times in this life and still here to love. Wow, Elaine, you're giving cats with 9 lives a challenge. You have some stories there. There's got to be a book in there somewhere. My heavens, I can't imagine. Died 5 times. And you maybe had incredible experiences on the other side, I'm thinking. So maybe one of these times you'll share some of that with us. It's remarkable. And Christina says, thanks for the warnings and real talk. And Robert says to Elaine, we are like the phoenix, reborn out of our own ashes. And Rosalind says, to avoid constant explaining. And Elaine says, I love your look and your bold heart. Thank you, Elaine. Thank you for that. Thank you, guys. All the love. Thank you so, so much. You're very, very kind and generous. But I think that this is a metaphor for anybody. You know, that when we have secrets, when we own our secrets, and then they don't have the power over us that they did, right? They just don't. And so people don't come up to me anymore and say that they're praying for me, you know, just because I'm not at the effect of it anymore. And I think that that's the case for all of us, you know, whatever our wounds or our secrets, that when we take ownership of them, it transforms everything. So much love to you all. And tremendous gratitude for your authenticity and your heart. And I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. Maggie and I go live every weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. In the meantime, please do check out the awesome programming on the Enlightened World Network. And until next time.